All right. So welcome, Carnegie Velvet, the winner of the 2021 People's Pleasure Awards for Best Performer. Congratulations. It's super, super nice to meet you. We talked a little bit, but like meet you in person. So basically we kind of just wanted to start with like a little like brief introduction of like, in case for the people who follow us that don't know as much about who you are. So usually what we do is like name, pronouns if you feel comfortable sharing, where you're from, your sign, and maybe there's fully sirens going on outside my apartment,
Oh.
and maybe like a little bit of just like baseline your work, what you do, that kind
Yeah, absolutely. I totally have traffic noise outside my house as well, so we'll just deal with that on
of thing.
both
Exactly.
ends. I am Carnegie Velvet, and my pronouns are they and them, and he and him. I actually at one time felt kind of pressured to make my porn performer persona a different gender from my own gender, and I can like get into that more at length. But for a while, I was using they and he as my civilian life. I mean, although I'm never really a civilian because I'm a sex worker all the time, but in my safe for work art life, using they and he, and then using they and she for Carnegie. But I feel like this past year, the internet has spoken, the world is wide, and people like want what I have and not just what I can make up about myself. So I am now just they and he pronouns for all things.
Okay, cool.
Um, and I know my light is going in and out back here, so I'm gonna go forward in a second. But I really just wanted to show and shout out. I'm like, look at my tits. No, it's this really cool patch. It says all cats are beautiful, and it is a cat lying on its back, batting around a cop car like it's a rat, and the cop car has a rat tail at the end of it.
Wow,
Um,
that's an amazing patch. It's kind of funny.
yeah, and it also means a cab. Uh so double whammy. That is a patch by my friend Ben Passmore, who is an incredible comic artist, black comic artist based out of New Orleans for a really long time and now based out of Philly, one of my dear friends. So I always love promoting and hyping other artists' work. I would say that's a pretty big part of who I am and what I do. Um, I really like making porn in whatever studio and setting I find to be great communicators, consensual and ethical communicators, and beers in the world, a place that I know I could like stand to see my body continue to live on their platform over the years and years and years. So, in terms of the work that I do that I don't create or direct myself, I'm pretty open. But I have been definitely most celebrated in the realms of queer porn. So I think I would say I am primarily a queer porn performer, and I am a queer person. Um, and in terms of my own work is definitely really driven by an interest in nature, in in all species and genders, and how we communicate who and what we are to one another, especially in a sexual context. Um, so some things that I have filmmaking wise gotten some celebration and awards for is White Fur, that I made with Harry porn director and star Nikki Silver. And that film was made for the Periwinkle Cinema of San Francisco Hanky Code Anthology. And the hanky code that we chose, like the hanky color we chose, was white fur, which means puppy play.
Mm-hmm.
And so white fur is a kind of sci-fi speculative fiction short kink film
Okay.
exploring puppy play. So it's a little bit of who I am and
Okay.
what I
No,
do and
that's interesting.
all the things.
Right. That's really cool. Thank you for sharing. I have a lot of follow-up questions that I want to ask you about. So I guess I would love to hear a little bit more about like your experience creating and directing and like your process with that and what you like about that. Just like as a start. I have a lot that I want to hear about, but
Yeah.
yeah, I'd be interested in hearing about that. And yeah, what you've worked on that you've really enjoyed and like what you've enjoyed about it. You mentioned this like piece in particular. But yeah.
Yeah, totally. Um, so it's funny because I've won a couple of porn awards, the International Toronto Porn Film Festival. That's like probably not the order of the words, but it's like said the same as the International like Toronto Film Festival, except it's the International Toronto Porn Festival, formerly known as the Feminist Porn Awards. Um, for White Fur, and I did not think it was a porn. So that was like kind of technically the first porn I ever directed, and I definitely didn't know or think of it as a porn. And then it was nominated and won as a porn. And even to this day, like it's lived and not been taken down on various sites like YouTube and Vimeo and different places, and yet also done well being sold on porn sites. So that's like fascinating to me, as someone who's like equally interested in like gonzo close up genitals and like uh, total concept art, softcore, whatever. Like they're all connected in the same beautiful mesh. And so I like it all, and I like that people receive that as porn,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
because porn is often, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, no, please continue.
I was just gonna say that like porn is often the thing that people colloquially say if they want to say that something isn't good quality, like civilians and non-porn workers really, even when they like porn themselves, the like debasing way is to say like, oh, this wasn't porn, it was art, or this wasn't art, it was porn. And the more that I grow and the more that I take breaks from sex work to find out what I need inside of it and then return to it, I inevitably always do, and inevitably always do return to making erotic creative work even when no one hires me to or tells me to. Like, that's just something I love to do. And the fact that I create stuff that makes the line between porn and art blurry is really where I want to see people go in terms of what they understand about porn. Because I'm not the only person doing that. It's just that explicit sex so much easier fits into the realm of like what porn is. So my process in creating things is kind of like, I usually think of like a vignette or a scene that I really want to see. Like I recently watched The Wilds. Have you seen that show? It's on like Amazon Prime or some shit like that.
I haven't seen it. I've heard of it though. It sounds like the name sounds familiar.
It's good. Oh my God. It's about these like nine high school aged girls who basically they're heading to some kind of like reform camp, like some kind of like, it's supposed to be a wellness retreat for young women, but also they're all like identified as kind of problem girls. So they're going to get like healed somehow at this thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then their plane crashes on a humanless island
Oh, I have heard of this. Yeah, wow.
somewhere, and then they have to survive, have to figure out how to survive, and it's brutal and also like beautiful and intense, and there's so many queer people in it, and then also of course it's like things are not what they seem, and then even more things are not what they seem to be. um and I had this like idea, and I'm not I'm not officially pitching this. This is just me talking. But
Mhm.
don't worry, Amazon, but also do worry. Just fuck you.
Yeah.
Yeah, like worry, please. I don't think you do, but if you
But
want
maybe, yeah, if you wanted to worry, like you could use worry in
to.
your life, just a little bit of worry.
You only have enough billions of dollars to like house millions of people, probably.
Exactly, that you're literally hoarding. But like, so if Amazon has to worry, like I think that's okay.
But I have this like concept where I'm like, because it, spoiler alert, within like the first episode, the nine become eight. Okay, so yeah, whew,
Tough,
yeah. So
tough.
right, so then they make these jokes about how they're gonna get discovered and they're gonna go on Wendy and they're gonna go on Ellen and they're gonna go on, all these shows and they're gonna get called the Unsinkable Eight. And so I was like, what if I made a concept porn that was like eight beached women somewhere and it was like involving like sea creature imagery. So it was like eight girls, eight arms, right?
Mhm.
Eight whole, no,
A lot,
16
yeah.
whole. Oh,
More than that, if you really count. I'm bad at
three,
math, but I'm like
24,
maybe 4 holes.
24 holes, 8 hours. And we call it like the unsinkable, indefatigable eight. Okay. So that's the kind of shit that I
Yeah.
like to do where I'm like, oh, this is funny. And then usually it starts out with something I think is funny,
Hmm.
honestly, which is interesting because I identify as a very dramatic person and as a person who like really loves poignant shit and like loves to cry. And then, but when I think about the starting place from which I make a lot of art, it's usually something that I think is absurd. And then I build sort of story, narrative, themes, and like feelings from that, right? Because then I can start looking at it from multiple angles. Um, yeah, that's kind of
Yeah.
how I talk about it.
I love that. That's such a good process because I feel like you really gotta like it's nice that it's like something that doesn't take itself too seriously and like something you enjoy and that like gets your attention, which is really fun. And then you like from there like kind of move to like the things that are really like meaningful and exciting to you. And also I really like what you were saying earlier, when you were talking about like kind of getting at like the ways that like different people define porn, and like stigmas that are attached to that. But then also like I know one of our other interns, Alexandra Gold, is writing an article right now about like like is porn art or like is porn considered art and why or why not. And I think like that's something that I've been thinking a lot about because like why is certain types of art like devalued or not considered art when like in reality it is. And like art brings people pleasure inherently in like different ways and like different kinds of pleasure and like maybe multiple types of pleasure at the same time. Like I know when me and CEO Mackenzie were like coming up with like the voting form and like the things that we wanted to like think through for the People's Pleasure Award, when we were thinking like best studio and best film, we were like,
I
what has
loved
great like
that.
sound effects and what has like beautiful images and like scenes and like is well shot, but also and like is lovely to look at, and also what turns you on, who had a great orgasm, like that kind of like thing, you know. And it's just like
Yes.
you can get so much pleasure out of a film from like so many different angles. And it really, yeah, it like blurs the lines between like highbrow art, whatever that means, and like that
Yeah.
can obviously be just deconstructed, and like sexy media, like I feel like it's all can kind of be like there's so many beautiful and like amazing things that like can come out of
Yes. Yes.
it.
Yes. 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 Yeah. I loved the voting form because I loved that it asked questions that make you feel like a film buff watching porn, which since I started being in porn, I have really watched film like porn like okay, okay, choices, it's like I also watch porn to like jerk off, but I would definitely say that like my jerk off brain and what it demands is slightly different from my like porn film buff brain. And it's not that they can't cross over. It has more to do with like timing and editing and there's certain things that are like edited for sort of like the pleasure of the visual, and there's things that are edited to be like, you know?
Definitely. I definitely relate to that also because I feel like since I've started working at math, like I've started watching like many like porn films for the job. In like when we got all the nominated films, like I was like, I'm gonna watch these because like I'm gonna be writing about them and promoting them, so, and like interviewing people who are in them. So like I want to know what I'm talking about. And I feel like sitting at my kitchen table, like with my headphones in and my roommates making breakfast and me like watching this and being like, what is like stylistically like interesting about this, and like what stands out to me is very different from like being like sexy times, you know.
Yeah.
Like there's so many different ways you can like watch the same things, and like they're all very fun.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm gonna not just, I mean, I could totally just chat with you if you want, but I also really am excited to hear all your questions, so I will pause.
So I have a little more questions like specifically about like getting to know you, and then I want to kind of transition to like a little bit of stuff about math and People's Pleasure Award specifically,
Yeah.
and then like as a preview like kind of move into like the sexually explicit media and like porn industries as a whole, and like we wanted to kind of get like an insider take opinion. But
Cool.
I was reading your Twitter bio, and you describe yourself as a queer liberation and disability justice activist, published author, sex educator, and award-winning porn spray. So I would love to hear a little bit about those things and your involvement in them. And specifically, I was interested in your use of disability justice and your use of sex educator, and particularly how you conceptualize both of those things, especially because like as we spoke about, like your pin like says or like implies, I can't remember if it says or implies a cab,
Oh
and so
no, it
like
implies, but it also is explicitly
the
like a
anti,
cop car, and it's a patch. Yeah, I sewed this on, so it's
and like yeah, like thinking about like I've been reading a lot about like disability justice and what that means in like thinking about like anti-carceral and like community-based methods of supporting disabled people
yes,
instead of like state-based methods of like helping that aren't really helping and are more like punitive and carceral and violent. So I guess yeah, I just like to hear, if you don't mind sharing like a little bit about how you define disability justice and your work there, and then also like sex ed and what sex ed means to you, because like I also teach sex ed, or like some like I don't know if I consider myself a sex educator, but I teach sex ed to middle schoolers sometimes. So like and
yeah.
so like I just also be interested in hearing what you do with that and like what that means to you as
Yay! Thank you. It's so funny because that bio is my more like official like porn careerist bio, and then my Carnegie VXXX is my more like video
well.
or
I'd
bio.
also love to hear about that one.
um, but yeah, no, it's so just so interesting, like what I bring to the fore, depending on who I'm expecting to be reading my bio. And so my safe for work bio, although that Twitter quickly became not entirely safe for work, but also I just think like why censor nipples? It's so stupid. Like deeply flawed logic. Anyway, so I have this, yeah, this like all of the words that I know someone else could use to describe what I do and what I have done from when I was known as Lyric Seal to now it's only been a year of being known as Carnegie Velvet, but I feel like I must have done some effective promo and reaching out to people because it felt good that this nomination happened, and it happened with my current name. I was like, oh, cool. That's like, when I knew I needed to switch personas, I felt really like nervous that I wasn't going to be able to kind of find my following again, or find more of the following that I wanted or something, or yeah. But saying that I'm a disability justice activist is really important to me because I'm a disabled person, and I define disability to mean a potential like multi-system um, functional either like dysregulation or chronic othered expression that changes how you interact with the structures that have been set up to function the way they do. And that includes social structures, right? So I'm autistic and I have ADHD and I have PTSD, and there's a lot of things that work really well in communication for other people that don't work well for me. Like interviews work really well for me because I feel pretty sure when I'm supposed to be speaking. Sometimes in conversations I don't know. So I do really love like question and answer kind of things that are super direct. And then I have physical disabilities. I have arthrogryposis and scoliosis and some fun, funky gut and intestinal stuff that has some things to do, I think, with my structural body and also has to do with like the structural body of my spirit and PTSD and what I've experienced because believe the hype, most of your serotonin is in your gut. Your gut is your soul. Like, whew, really, really important. I say as I drink a large cup of coffee. So
Well, you gotta do what you gotta do. Coffee is a treat.
you got to do what you got to do, and that is kind of what disability justice is to me. It is like finding out what are the necessary steps it actually takes for someone who moves through the world differently than me to get their access needs met. What does it also take for that person to then understand what mine are and meet mine, even if we get to things that we want and need differently, right? And a concept that I coined in my movement organizing work is access reality. So access need is a term from disability justice movement, which is distinct and differentiates itself from the disability rights movement because disability justice is inherently a BIPOC, trans, queer, other marginalized identities centered and led movement that's about like revealing and unfolding and unfurling the actual multiplicity of disability as a marginalized identity and how it intersects with other identities. So it's inherently an intersectional movement, inherently a diverse and anti-racist and environmentalist movement. And so I use it as an umbrella term for myself for honestly like all of my political beliefs. Like I am an anarcho-communist and disability justice is inherently anti-capitalist and anti-authoritarian statist, you know? So there is like there's a lot wrapped in there, right? And you were saying even like reading about disability justice in terms of like an incarceral system, right? A punitive justice system that's not justice, right? The very similar ways that like prisoners in prison get treated versus disabled people in homes or centers or institutions or whatever they're being called, you know, get treated. So that's my spiel. I'm so curious what you have been reading too and what you've been interested in, and then I'll return to the sex educator part.
Yeah, well, I just like I study gender studies at my university, and I've been taking a lot of classes on like disability justice and all of that. And I recently took a class with a professor called Christina Crosby, who wrote a book about her experience with disability after she suffered from a bike accident and became paralyzed. And she's a really amazing professor, and we studied this we did a lot of like different disability justice readings and reading about like mutual aid and the intersection with disability justice. And I can definitely like email you or text you about
Yeah.
like readings in particular after. But particularly, I was just reading with her about this performance collective, Sins Invalid.
Yes.
It's like a collection of disabled performers and like what performance means to them and like what that community means to them. And I'm working towards a senior essay that's centering around like art and community and like artist collectives and like what it means to be in community making art versus like catering to like art institutions with violent histories.
Yeah.
So I think that is definitely very connected. And like, yeah, if you have any thoughts, I mean, you definitely got it about like the intersection of like performance, community, disability justice. Like, I would love to hear, but also if that doesn't feel like something that's super connected in your experience.
No. Oh my God, no, it's super connected because um I I am like a spiritual and religious person in definitely frequently the other category in the drop down menu of religions. I practice voodoo and I am also a like lifelong like raised and am now being and going to raise future kids in the tradition of Unitarian Universalism. So like my beliefs are maximalist. I'm just like so many things, all the things. Um, Freedom and justice and equity and beauty and truth. Those are the things that I like and love. Um, and I feel like at a very crucial moment in time, and I've been thinking about this in terms of astrology, shouting out Jenny Necklace, because she gets me through so many things. Um, and and like the time I'm supposed to be focusing on in my life as like a time where it was really challenging, but I was getting good stuff. So like the thing that's circling back is the good stuff, not the difficult circumstances of that time. And the time that was highlighted is like 2010 to 2012, basically. And it was during that time that I was a crust punk hitchhiking around the country, went to the US Social Forum, went to the Allied Media Conference, got connected to Sins Invalid, applied to be an intern, traveled to the San Francisco Bay Area from Jersey and Western Massachusetts, where I grew up in Jersey and I went to college in Western Mass, so that I could intern with Sins, who are amazing, and perform in my first porn at Crash Pad, and um, start working with Axis Dance Company in the capacity of like community dancer and students, and eventually teacher and fellowship receiver of and now choreographer, commissioned choreographer for them for this season. So it's funny because everything that is connected for me converged at once during that period.
Mm-hmm.
But then, because of so many different energies and ideas about propriety and conflicting understandings of how I should be talking about myself and defining my work as an artist and an activist and an educator, because I would say that's the trifecta of what I do. Um, that I couldn't that I yeah that I couldn't reveal all of the parts of myself in each of those locations, right? So it's like porn was going to be porn,
Mm-hmm.
and dance was going to be dance, and Sins Invalid was going to be Sins Invalid, and by that I mean disability justice. So even though Sins Invalid is a performance collective, and that's really how they started under the leadership of Patricia Byrne and Leroy Moore, um, the like amount of like performances that have happened are amazing and great, and there's so many and it's so dynamic. But really, like the core of what Sins Invalid does is that they are a movement organizing hub. and they educate and help ground and develop disabled people's like language about disability justice, tips on how to meet their own access needs within organizing. So they do a lot of like community education and community organizing and outreach, and that is really how they show up inside of the disabled community that I'm a part of. And technically, I'm like a part of Sins Invalid because I was in a show and have had many different relationships and work capacities with them. So I'm just kind of in the Sins family now. But Sins Invalid is dope, and their website is an incredible resource. And I would also say that the second edition of the Disability Justice Primer is something that is like growing hearts and breaking minds, you know, like all over. That's definitely like my number one reading recommendation.
All right, thank you. I'm definitely gonna look that up after. I appreciate it. Let me think what else. Thank you also. That was really like interesting to hear. I like appreciate it.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I can answer the sex educator thing really fast.
Oh yes, definitely, definitely.
Yeah, which is just that I think most people who do sex education work, it's really similar to like other kinds of marginalized disciplines or modalities or mediums. For instance, being an herbalist or an astrologer, I feel like there's a lot of people who are like, oh, well, I'm not really blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't know if I'm really this, right? And I said that about being a sex educator for many years. And then I was like, well, would I call myself like an embodiment educator? Like that as a choreographer and dancer and porn performer and sex worker in other capacities, I've learned a lot about my body and other bodies. Do I feel comfortable educating and speaking from that place? Yes. Does that place involve sex and sexuality? 100%, you know? So that's how I eventually came to that place. I was like, oh, I don't have to be Dan Savage to call myself a sex educator. Great. Okay, that's fine. Like someone doesn't have to give me a certificate. They probably do if I'm going to be working in certain settings. But being a porn performer and accepting that that was something that is just always going to be on the internet, plus I want to make more of it forever. Working in certain kinds of public school systems is just like not an option for me unless they like don't really have time to research me. It's like if they do a background check, I have not been convicted of any crimes, you know, and that's great, love it. But it's like my feeling is I'm like, oh God, if I were like a teacher that parents could get in touch with, right? They love the internet now. And they're just like, and imagine, oh my God, it's like my nightmare imagining someone being like, this person is unfit to like be around kids because of blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And people do use that, and sex workers lose their jobs, other jobs, or relationships, or housing, or all of these things because of that getting revealed, even when like one, I don't give a shit if shit is illegal. Sex work should all be legal. Also, we shouldn't have laws or state, but you know, that's the other.
That's a whole nother for me.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's like also even legal sex work is so stigmatized in society that you still can't bring it up or have it be something that is known about you in all circles. So I think that sex educator is kind of my like porn careerist lingo of being like, I'm a sex educator that also has sex on camera for money. And some people can hang with that, right? They're like, that's who I want to get sex education from, right? So it was definitely being in the Bay and really becoming close friends with Jiz Lee, who was absolutely the person who like opened the golden door into queer porn for me, really like took me under their wing, as it were. Um, and that's what made me feel like I could be a sex educator, is because I kept getting hired for sex education related gigs that in the community of queer porn performers, being a porn performer was like a prerequisite of being a sex educator in these like sex store settings.
Yeah.
And that was so cool because I was like, oh yeah, I'm qualified. So that's my perspective on that.
Yeah, that's really good to hear, because it's definitely like, yeah, like finding, like taking the term and like, you are a sex educator and like qualification is like bullshit, and like taking the people in your community who understand that and understand that you have something to give, where people have a need to learn about sex education and like your experiences. And like, I think that's a really good way to think about it, because yeah, for sure, like there's a lot of bullshit with like qualifications and like stigma and all that, when it's like,
Yeah.
obviously there doesn't need to be. And like, it's very cool that you like have found how to like take your knowledge and like use it where like it's appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. I'm trying. I'm trying. It's always a negotiation, but I'm definitely working on it.
um and then I wanted to ask you, pivoting a little, unless you have anything else you want to like get in there,
Pivot away.
I was curious, I wanted to ask, have you ever heard of math before this event? And like, what had you heard? What was your experience with math? I guess I'd be interested to know.
Yeah. Um, yeah, actually math has been on my radar since I'm pretty sure it was Mackenzie that I was in touch with. Got in touch with me a few years ago, and it was kind of during the time when I was in transition, in my mind at least, thinking about how to put Lyric Seal to rest, or like retire Lyric Seal but not retire from porn. And so it was a complicated time, and I'm sure I was complicated to communicate with. Not necessarily in a negative way. I just was like, well, I don't know who I am. But my partner, my Spice, we've been working on different variations of like spouse and husband and wife, and we're both trans, and so we're like, okay, and so I'm Hyph,
Mm-hmm.
and he is Spice,
Oh,
and
I love that. Spice is a good one. I feel like.
right,
Yeah.
I know. I was actually like realizing that I hadn't heard that before shocked me. I'm like, really? All these millennials, Spice Girls? Like, come
Mm-hmm.
on. So it's cute. But yeah, my Spice and I have tried to. Well, anyway, we were trying to figure out if we could go to all these different places, and we usually go to Massachusetts and New Jersey when we can, and now it hasn't been possible with pandemic stuff. But we go to visit our families, and so I was trying to squeeze in a little photo shoot with Math actually in New York a few years back, and then it was kind of like difficult to arrange, and then it was sort of like next time I'm there, I guess, peace. Um, and so it's been kind of not something that was returned to. Also, I think it was like my old email address. Um, so I actually have been like thinking about Maths for a while, and that was why I was really moved when I saw that I was nominated, and I was like, I know who that is. I know what they're doing. Um, I also think Math is such a funny and brilliant name for an erotic magazine, so I'm definitely a fan of that. Yeah.
Yeah, the name is always very fun. I'm like, I work for math, and people are like, what now? You hate math? And I'm like, that is true, and it's not really about math.
Yeah,
um,
yeah, yeah, yeah. You're
that's
like,
it.
I like this kind of math.
Yeah, this kind of math I like. The other kind is very confusing and hard. I don't like it. But that's cool that you almost did a shoot for math, and like maybe in the future that could still be in the stars. I don't know exactly what Mackenzie has planned, but now we have your correct email finally, your new one. So it'll be
And I'm a winner, so maybe, I don't know, winner's photo shoot or something.
exactly. I think that would be really cool because then we could like feature. I mean, we like Mackenzie needs to move. I think it would be cool if like a photo shoot about the winner and like we could write a little article. Anyways, that's kind of off topic. But I wanted to also talk a little bit about you being a winner. Because as I mentioned, like right before we hit recording, like I think it was upwards of like 40. It was a lot of people like voted for you, and like you won this whole thing. Like we had like 200 people voting, and like so clearly you have a large fan base and a lot of people who love you and like wanted to take the time to like vote for you and like shout you out and be like vote for Carnegie Velvet and all that. So I guess I would ask like what winning this means to you, and if you have anything you would want to say to your fans or the people you voted for or the people who voted for you.
Oh, yeah. Well, I am like positive that many of the people who voted for me are my friends, but also, I mean, kind of relationship in general is about cheering one another on and being fans of what one another does and what's important to us. So I feel really grateful that I have like a vibrant, dynamic community of people that I know really well to people that I might only know through Instagram or Twitter, um, who believe in me and believe in what I do and are willing to say like, yes, I vouch for this porn star. So I definitely say thank you. It's amazing and it's such a lovely feeling. And I mean, I am a Sagittarius with uh like mid heaven, whatever people say in Leo. So I literally like all the world is a stage, and
Mhm.
I don't mind a first prize ever. So I feel both moved and humble about it, and also like, yes, I'm 100% that
Yeah,
so
for sure.
I feel great. Thank you so much.
Cool. Thank you for sharing. People are gonna be very excited to. I mean, I think people are excited that you won it and like to the interview and all that. Um, and then kind of those were my questions about math and the awards. Just wanted to like that's what like brought us here. I mean, other than the fact that like you're very cool and I really wanted to interview you, even before I knew you won. Um, but I wanted to get, or like me and Mackenzie were talking about how like we really want to get kind of like an insider scoop into the industry and like your work, and like you've done like work with CrashPad, but we don't also have to talk about them like specifically. But I guess like I would want to like ask you about what you think like the state of like sexy media is right now, and like what are your favorite parts of the industry, and like what are your current frustrations.
Yo, yeah, totally. Well, I am that bitch, so I gotta start with my current frustrations,
Mhm.
and then get to end on an excited note. It makes me feel good. So, um, I would really just say that like I I don't I don't really try to maintain the binary in my head of like feminist and not feminist porn, or uh mainstream and indie. Like obviously people know what budgets they're working with. It's apparent when a place is like a DIY thing, but also a lot of the clips that nobody pays for and no one really knows what was the context of it being uploaded, right? On Pornhub, we don't know if that's consensual. All of those, all of what's being shown and watched is like considered mainstream entertainment, even though it's not being created in like a studio with a name and
Mhm.
porn stars with names, right? So it's like, I just don't think the standard or the most viewed or downloaded thing should be something that is not consensual, right? So it's like, to me, that's not necessarily, well, it is an industry problem, but I think overall it's a rape culture problem, right?
Mhm.
So to me, my biggest frustration is just the way that the porn industry, like all other industries under capitalism, has participated and low-key sanctioned various kinds of like bodily atrocities, right?
Mhm.
And that's why I think like sex workers, consensual sex workers, make so much emphasis around like, yes, there is porn that is not consensual, and yes, there is porn that is a result of trafficking, and yes, there is also porn that is not those things. And a really great way to guarantee that you're getting porn where everyone is over 18 and consented to what they're doing is paying for your porn. Yes, getting a membership. So that's my first thing. And then that kind of funnels into some really cool stuff that I think is happening and being addressed right now, like with the BIPOC Adult Industry Collective that I am a part of. Cinnamon Love is one of the um, like organizers, founders, I believe, and is who like did outreach to me and got me connected with it. Mickey Maud's part of it. And it started as just like a group of like Black industry professionals who were like, hi, do you like being tagged as BBC all the time? Do you like being tagged as like monster interracial first time, like ebony, like all of these different like otherings of our bodies, right? No? Oh, okay, like maybe let's do what we've been doing individually, fighting and advocating for ourselves together. Um, and that has been really amazing. Like the amount, I see a shift happening right now in porn performers really taking agency over the kinds of things that they're in, when they're in them, why they're in them, and whatever, how it makes them feel. Because I know that a lot of like people that I've known and loved in my life, and this continues to be true, right? Like sex work is also about body politics and desirability.
Mhm.
And so there's definitely a lot of people I've known and loved who have been, say, white or white passing, non-disabled or non-disabled passing, thin, uh, cis passing, which I think is a really, really tricky term that I don't even really like to
Mhm.
say. But people who've had success, right, cloaking and shielding who they really are, and therefore have engaged with some of the fucked up standards of the standard industry, right? Because they could and because it got them work, right? And I am never gonna shame a sex worker for what gets them paid. Like, I'm really not, because that's not feminist to me. But I will say that those of us who've been kind of on the edge, who are like, it does seem like a lot of people, thousands of people think I'm hot. Great, okay. But I still was kind of containing myself. I was still like, okay, don't gain this much weight because then you'll fall into this category of body. Okay, don't reveal your real pronouns because then they're going to need to put you in the trans section of the site that either doesn't get as much traffic or it gets really like creepy fetishy traffic, right? All of these ways that like we try to prevent ourselves from being othered, we were like, what if we all just acted like this was the standard? Like our own bodies are the standards of the porn that we're making.
Mhm.
Therefore, people can come meet me here. And that has been kind of the revolutionary experience of the pandemic in general, right?
Mhm.
So many people started OnlyFans. A lot of porn phobic and sex work phobic people make fun of that, right? Because it's so stigmatized. And obviously, OnlyFans works kind of like Patreon, not as well as Patreon, but kind of like Patreon, in that you don't have to be a not safe, you don't have to be a sexually explicit worker to have content on there, right? Um, but like it turned a lot of people into self-starters and self-creators and directors,
Mm-hmm.
which means that a lot of trans, black, brown, fat, disabled bodies and people were making online content that people were purchasing. And yeah, getting people to actually pay for the shit they consume online is still rough. It's going to be rough for a while, until society breaks or the internet breaks,
Whichever comes
happens.
first.
Yeah, exactly. Um, I'm just holding out for the earth not breaking. That's like the number one thing I don't want to break. But yeah, I mean, I do see this revolution happening in myself and in other people where they're like, oh, maybe I don't need to like crouch and carve and twist myself into these uncomfortable positions to say something metaphorically and literally in order to make sexy content that people will want. Because I was just like, if the things that I know and have known from being an escort and a dom stand true and a cam person,
Mhm.
it's that people want all kinds of shit.
Yeah.
There are billions of people on this planet. How did anyone let themselves be convinced
Yeah.
that someone is not going to find what you make hot? Because someone will. More likely, hundreds of someones.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my vibe on where things are at right now. And studios I can shout out that I work with and love are Crash Pad, Pink and White Productions in general, Trouble Films, Naughty Natural, Harry Porn. It's the only kind of Harry Porn site that I have been accepted onto because other Harry Porn sites that are directed by cis men are
Mm-hmm.
often really narrowed in on, okay, if you have hair, then you can't have any other oddnesses
Mm-hmm.
or Mars on your body. Like, as a man who misses the 70s, I can't be distracted by your tattoos or your scars or your real ass body, right? So it's so weird. They're like natural hair, but it's like this
But it's like,
curated experience, right? Like, but Naughty Natural is cool, and it proves that hairy fans actually like more
mm-hmm.
a larger diversity of bodies than they've been given credit for.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I can think of. I'm probably forgetting somewhere. Oh, hello. I am forgetting the porn company that I'm currently contracted with in Seattle, of course. Scum Trust Productions, and I've actually like co-directed a film for them, one of part of the Hotel Hard series with Sarah Barbaric and Alistair Fern are the two directors and content creators of that. And it's like a very witchy nature forest ancestral ritual BIPOC and trans-centered kinky porn company making weird cool stuff, and all of the like weird cool concepts that I have, like I was saying, my vignettes are like possible with them. And yeah, and Syra is also, I'm close friends with both of them, and Syra is one of my besties, so
Yeah, well, that kind of answers my last question, but
yeah.
which was going to be like, what can we look for next from you? Like, what are you working on? What are you excited for? And you kind of started that, but if you have anything else to add before we wrap up, that was my last question.
Yay! Yes, yes. Oh my gosh. Well, I am excited about a lot of like disability justice organizing work that I have coming up that I can't like reveal yet because I'm still building some contracts, but I will say you can look for that under my Neve name and persona at Neve though, um, on Instagram and Twitter. Um, and then as far as porn production stuff goes, We at Scum Trust they've definitely decided not to do any multi-person shoots for the rest of 2021. But we do little like dinner mixers and outdoor little gatherings of the performers that want to work that year and directors and producers, and we just like hang out in a garden and like eat snacks and like talk about what we want to shoot and who we want to shoot with. So that's coming up in August, and a shooting calendar will probably be created then. I've also been doing a lot of self-directed, just solo stuff, and some stuff with Vinny Gem, my partner's porn name, which is always, he doesn't like to reveal his face. So yeah, creative. I'm trying to build some more like creative masking scenarios.
Yeah, I mean, that's so cool. I feel like there's fun things you can do with that.
Absolutely, absolutely, very much so. So yeah, I'm like low pressure, like low impact, hopefully on my like celestial body, but also high gains, high rewards, high revolution and exploration is really what's happening for the rest of 2021. And then 2022 has like a mess of stuff I can't even imagine in it right now. Oh, my new, as Neve, I have new choreography that will be debuted on Axis Dance Company in San Francisco at Z Space, October 22nd through 24th of this year, and I will be there. So if anybody wants to hang out with me in San Francisco, that's where I'll be for at least a week in October. So maybe I'll visit Crash Pad and
Hmm.
Trouble and other folks. So
Yeah, that would be fun.
yeah.
Well, that is all of my questions. So thank you so, so much for doing this interview. It was really nice to talk to you. I'm gonna stop recording now. That's it.
Yay, thank you.